Hi, it's Elaine Hamilton Grundy from the Reiki Centre, and this is part 2 of the Resilience series. So in this video we're talking about flexibility, but I'd just like to recap a little bit in terms of what my definition of resilience is in the first place. In the first video I talked about this in more depth, but essentially when I'm referring to resilience I am talking about I use the same concept as in physics. So in physics, resilience is the ability of a substance or a material to kind of take on the energy of an impact. So whether that's the skin, when you hit it, it bounces back into its original shape, or in the terms of rubber, when you hit rubber, or when you compress rubber, it will spring back into its original shape. So it's the ability of a material or an object to maintain its original structure. And so we talked about this in the last video in terms of really the key to resilience is finding and maintaining your own internal original shape. You could call that your true essence. You could call that your original you-ness, that you-ness that is coming out of your eyes, you that has been staring out at the world ever since you can remember. That is eternal. That is never changed. You might have changed your beliefs, and you might have changed a lot of your structures. You certainly changed your body, and there's all kinds of things that have changed, but your original awareness, presence, or life force, it's the same. And it will be the same until the day you die. This is your original shape. This is your original person, your original essence, if you like. And so this video, I would like to talk more about the flexibility part. So it's like the elastic, the how do you hit a challenge and then spring back into your original essence. And this is really around taking more deliberate care over your thinking. And it's that ability, as you create more space around your thinking, it gives you much more flexibility. And that flexibility opens your creative capacity. When you're very fixed, very fixated on certain ideas, and you'll know people like this in your life, it's like, doesn't matter, it's like the flat earth people. There's no arguing with people that believe certain things in their mind, even though all the evidence is pointing to something different. There's just no shifting. There's no room for new ideas. There's no room for creativity. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're that closed, but for most of us, we have certain blind spots, and we do have certain tensions that are occurring in our belief structures. So it's an exploration of what are these belief structures we've got going on. Many of them are running unconsciously underneath other belief structures. And so it's about starting to look and be curious. So in the dismantling, it's not about getting rid of all these thoughts. I don't want to have any thoughts at all. I don't want to have any beliefs. Well, you can try, but essentially we're just looking to loosen up the knots. So to make it a bit more spacious. Within that space, when you start to really open your mind, then you will start to notice the flexibility starts to come, and the more flexible you become, then the bigger the openings. In the beginning, it's like a knot, like a proper knot. In the beginning, it's really tight and it's hard to undo. And then once you loosen it up a little bit, the rest is easy. You just unravel the whole thing super quick, right? So the first thing is to just start to get that knot loosened a little bit. Once you have a little bit open, then the rest of it just unravels on its own. And the way we do this, first of all, it's to look at how the belief structures, just to get some kind of understanding of how these belief structures are formed in the first place. Because for most of us, we have, even though when we think about it logically, it's like, no, I know I'm not my thoughts, right? I know I'm more than my thoughts. But oh, my dog's barking. Shall we go open the door for my dog? Here we go. Go. There. Oh, you didn't even see my dog after all that. Oh, well. Never mind. I'll probably delete this anyway. But maybe I won't. So, in terms of the understanding, it's looking at it. So let's imagine that we start off with a fairly clean slate. So when we first arrive on this planet, newborn baby, there's not a lot of thinking going on. There's not a lot of belief structures. We don't know what we like. We don't know what we dislike. As a toddler, we stick everything in our mouths, or we kind of grab at everything, and we're just exploring. So the first set of belief structures that start to come in are from our parents. So they tell us what's right. They tell us what's wrong. They often start to guide us. This tastes nice. This doesn't taste nice. Like, don't just pick up dirt from the ground to eat it. That's not good. But you can have this on your plate. That's good. And so you start to get a sense of the way that the world is preferred. Now, this is important. It's your parents' preference. It's not necessarily true. It's true for them. It's not necessarily true for you. But already we start to develop this kind of grid system, like what I call a Google algorithm. We start to look at search terms, and we start to layer on, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And then as you go to school, then the teachers add their grid, and your friends, and then the society comes in, the culture plays a huge part. And then over time, we build this huge kind of database of our likes and our dislikes and our preferences and what's right and what's wrong. And we never question. So we don't question what's right and wrong in terms of, even from a cultural perspective, even from a global perspective, from humanity's point of view. It's like, well, these are the wisdoms that have been passed on. And some people have a very flexible mind, and they are constantly questioning, like the philosophers and the scientists. And there are lots of different avenues of questioning that happen. But in general, we kind of come to our conclusions that are satisfactory for us, and then it's locked in. Now, if you've worked with algorithms, then you know that once they start to get set, it narrows the search. So you start to narrow the results. So on your computer, this is the way it's working. As you're searching, Google is figuring out what you like, what you don't like, trying to give you more and more and more of what they consider you would like to see. They consider. And that's based on your previous searches. So it starts to build this whole story, and then there's this predictive pathway that you start to go down, and you don't see other stuff anymore. Like if you search the same term on your friend's computer, you'll come up with completely different websites. So this is something to really understand. Like, we walk around with a mind full of set parameters, and we rarely look to see, well, do I want to clear my cache? Do I want to just clear the history? Do I want to clear and have a look? In times like this, where the world is literally, the paradigms are shifting faster than we can really keep up, and industries are going to start crashing, and things are going to start shifting. And already in the UK they're talking about social distancing as something that's going to be more and more prevalent in part of our lives. It's going to change the structure of our society. Now, in these times, there is really no real benefit from having a rigid, fixed search structure or algorithm. Those of us with very fixed beliefs are going to really struggle. There's no flexibility. The knot is so tight. And then when your belief is connected with something that then happens in the external world, it just leaves you reeling. And the reeling is simply because you just can't see any other way out of it. And it's a huge amount of suffering. And a lot of the suffering that's going on at the moment, totally, people are dying, absolutely. But there's also a huge layer of suffering that's happening on top of that that is not necessary. And this unnecessary suffering is to do with how rigid our beliefs are. So really, if there's any message in this idea of flexibility, it's to start really looking. And the simplest way, I mean, I'm a big fan of Byron Katie. For those of you who don't know her work, I would really jump online and just have a look at some of the stuff she's doing. It's quite similar to CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, whereby you just you look at a thought. It's very simple. You just look at a thought and very gently, especially if it's stressful. So you have a stressful thought like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. And it's sending you into a complete panic attack. And then as you look at it, I'm going to lose my job. Is it really true? Now, the purpose of this exploration, remember, it's not to just rip the thought out of your mind and go, no, and move into denial, right? That's the opposite. We don't want denial either. It's not to say, no, I'm not going to lose my job and I'm refusing to look at it. That's equally ridiculous. So we're not looking at the truth. I'm going to lose my job. Is that true? Yes or no? We're looking at it more from, I'm going to lose my job is creating a lot of stress. Is it really true though? So could it be equally true that I'm not going to lose my job? Maybe. And you can just play with it, right? This is just a contemplation. It's an invitation for you to just loosen up the anxiety and the stress and the predictive quality of your thinking. Firstly, through the assumption that it is not predictive. It has simply been put in there. It's an algorithm. You've programmed yourself into thinking this. And now you can deprogram yourself to looking at it and going, okay, I'm fearful that I'm going to lose my job, or I'm fearful I'm going to run out of money, or I'm fearful that I'm going to lose my mortgage, or whatever it is, or I'm fearful that my industry is about to collapse. And look at it from the opposite perspective. Could it be equally true that that won't happen? Or even if it's not equally true, is it possible that it might not happen? And then you're also looking at outside of that. So you're also looking at, is it possible that something in between could happen? Is it possible that something completely new could happen? And I know that this sounds really super obvious, but I also know that we're not doing it. So there's a lot of people that get very, very stressed and the cyclical thinking starts. What am I going to do? And this, and blah, blah, blah. And they don't just bring it back into, how can I loosen this thinking in the first place, and just bring it into more of an opening. It's an opportunity to be flexible and practice flexible thinking. It will serve you very, very well for the next, because unless you can be open and flexible in your thinking, you cannot allow new, creative, or inspired impulses to come up. And that's essentially what we're going to talk about next. But your ability to be creative is absolutely pivotal on your ability to be flexible with your thinking. If you can't be flexible with your thinking, there's no new ideas that can pop into your head. It's just not possible. So the practice of flexible thinking is a very, very important skill to have in order to invite the creative impulse to come out of you, that the creative expression comes out of you through a creative, flexible, open mind. So this is really critical. So in terms of the stressful thoughts, just start to meditate on them. Again, if you do Reiki, if you're Reiki 2, write a label. Right? Whatever that thought is, to seeing the other side of it, to harmonizing it, to seeing the truth in it. I mean, there's so many labels that you could be sending healing to. whereby you are essentially inviting a different way of looking at it. So looking at thoughts also, another way that is great is looking at all the different variations. So it's kind of like, again, coming back to the job, oh, I'm going to lose my job. And then you're looking at it going, I'm not going to lose my job. And then coming up with reasons why that's equally true. I'm not going to lose my job. Then you could also look at, I'm going to get a better job. And then looking at all the ways that that might happen. Or I'm going to create something completely new and look at the ways that could happen. So it's like taking a thought and just opening it up and seeing what happens. And if nothing else, it's going to reduce your stress, because the stress comes when we tighten into cyclical patterns of thinking. And in a lot of ways, this is just not a very helpful way of doing things at the moment. So I hope that's just given you some food for thought, and I really hope that it helps you to explore this idea. So there are many resources out there in terms of how to create more flexible thinking structures. Byron Katie I've already mentioned. I think she's amazing. CBT I've mentioned. But then there are also other ways, like a lot of the law of attraction stuff as well, gets you to shift your mindset and all that kind of thing. So anything that's helping you to shift your mindset, open your thinking, these kind of things are great practices right now, and very, very important practices as well. So yes, I wish you great joy with that. Thank you for listening.